Hello, everybody. It is great to be here. I am Donna Bauer, and I'm the original note buyer. And what is that?
You're good, Donna. Go ahead.
Okay. So I am excited to be at the expo again. It's great to be with old friends, and I know that Nick has put together a fabulous presentation. I got to hear a little bit of it this morning, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. And I think you're going to be thrilled with what I have to share with you. I don't know if we can see how many people are on or anything like that, but where are y'all from? I encourage you to make comments in the chat. I have my assistant, Matthew Miller, here, he's going to be helping me, and he'll keep track of the chat and let me know what I need to take care of. But where are y'all from? And I'd also like to know if you're new to notes. So I welcome any comments. So it's very odd not to know if anybody is out there, but so I'm just going to get started. So I am very excited because there's so many things that you can do with notes. I've been doing notes for over 30 years, and I have done just about everything there is to do with notes. And what's really cool is that you can move from one strategy to another, okay? And depending on what the market is doing. And so I've done performing notes. That's my favorite. I did non-performing notes as well. I used to have a big office and a staff of 7 or 8 people, and we ran a pipeline of 50 non-performing notes that we were doing workouts on and all kinds of stuff. So I've definitely been in that space, but my favorite thing is definitely the seller carrybacks. I've also created a lot of notes. So that's another thing that you can do is instead of looking for notes, you can actually create your own, or you can help other people create notes. And what I have found is that if you need cash, whether you need money right now, or whether you're trying to build your IRA, or whether you want to build a monthly cash flow, it doesn't matter what you're trying to accomplish. There is a strategy with notes that you can use. And so I like to tell my students to figure out what their goals are, and then I help them to figure out what strategy would best suit them to accomplish those goals. So I think it's interesting now that everybody is ready to jump on the non-performing note bandwagon, and that is a good thing to do. Actually, I'm waiting for it as well. There's a lot of federal and state mandates and laws that are kind of holding things up a bit, but when that cog gets out of the wheel, so to speak, there's going to be an avalanche of non-performing notes. And I'm certainly ready, willing, and able to jump on those. But what I found was interesting is when the quarantine first happened, my immediate reaction was, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? How's this going to affect my business? And the first thing I thought of was, are people going to quit paying on my notes? And so then I realized, wait a minute, well, first of all, I have not had one person fail to pay, not one person. So I do think that it depends on what kind of notes you hold. I also think that people are more likely not to pay rent than they are to not pay on their mortgage. So I think that has something to do with it as well. But then I got to thinking, well, will I be able to sell notes to anybody? Because people might be afraid of them now. If they can't foreclose and take the property back, then what's going to happen? And I realized that, well, first of all along, I have used very conservative guidelines as I teach my students and with my investors and for my own account. I always make sure that there is plenty of equity in the deal. And that way, if the market should crash or if there was any problem and that people weren't paying, there would be plenty of equity to cover that. And having equity is really the key to creating a safe investment, a safe note investment. And so I didn't have any problem with that. But then I got to thinking about, okay, if we get ready to buy a note, somebody who's paid all along, what if all of a sudden now they've lost their job? If they're a non-essential worker or something like that. And I thought, well, that could be an issue. Turns out it wasn't, but at the time I was worried about it. And so I came up with some ideas of how. The first thing I did was figure out, what if they can't pay for like 3 months or 6 months? And I was happily surprised as I did the calculations on all the notes that I hold. Even if I said, okay, I'll give you a 6-month moratorium on your payments. You don't have to make a mortgage payment for the next 6 months, and I'll just tack that on to the end of your note. Even if I did that, it would only affect my rate of return by like 0.25%. And I'm buying notes locking in 12 to 15%, many times 20 to 25%. And then I get early payoffs, and I'm almost embarrassed to tell you what it is because people will say, well, that's too good to be true. But it's not, it's a fact. Many times, and I'm going to show you an example here in a minute, I can wind up with 80, 90, 100% rates of return. And so even if I needed to adjust and let the note payor, have a little moratorium during this time, it's barely going to affect my rate of return. And the truth is, it's much better to keep them on track than it is to kick them out, take the property back, and then have to deal with all the costs of foreclosure and getting it ready for a new buyer and everything. So if they have always been an on-time payor, then I don't fault them that they're having problems during this particular situation. So I kind of use that as a guide. So I'm happy to report that overall, with all my investors and with all the notes I'm holding, we haven't had any problem with non-payments on our notes. But I'm prepared if I do. So then I got to wondering about, I've got all my students, we're sending out direct mail, and we were doing lots of networking at RIA meetings and getting on expos like this. We were doing all kinds of stuff. And I thought, now, how are we going to find notes? Well, I real quick learned that everybody converted to Zoom or some platform like what we're on today, and the networking keeps going on. It's not as much fun as when you're in person, but nonetheless, people are doing the haves and wants and posting, I've got a note for sale, I'm looking for a note. And so that hasn't stopped anybody. And what was really the silver lining to all of this was the note sellers need cash. Everybody needs cash. And nobody could leave their home. And even now, although you can leave your home, many people are afraid to. And so, they've kind of gotten into the routine of hibernating, so to speak. And so what I realized is, with flipping seller carrybacks, it is absolutely the perfect thing for this market. And I was worried about, would we still have people who want to sell notes? You know what happened? People who were not interested in selling their notes last fall and the first of the year, all of a sudden, they're calling us back because now they need cash. And so it just busted the market wide open. And we were totally flooded with deals. It was amazing. This spring was one of the busiest times I've ever had. And then what happened was, in June, when they lifted the quarantine, everybody went on vacation and nobody wanted to do notes. And so for July and August, it was like we didn't hear from anybody. And exactly what I thought would happen. In September, the floodgates started again. And so I've got notes coming in like crazy because people want to sell. They need cash. And the great thing is that you're in a position to provide them cash. And if you are out of work or you need to work from home, note buying is the perfect answer. And so, what I would like to share with you today is the seller carryback notes. Um, the non-performing notes, I'm going to back up just a minute here and let's talk about the non-performing. The thing is that with the non-performing, a lot of people find that they can make more money with non-performing than with the performing notes. While if you happen to hit a home run, I think that's true. If you look at the big picture, I'm not so sure, because I have one student who made over $400,000 on one note deal. And that was a real home run. And the key to it is the larger the note that you're flipping, the larger your profit. And so I'm not quick to allow people to step all over me and tell me that non-performing notes are better than my seller carrybacks, because that's not necessarily true. But besides that, the thing is that you need to realize about non-performing notes is they are much riskier than doing the seller carrybacks. They are riskier because you don't know what's going to happen. Or you don't know all of the nuances when you buy a note. For example, you might have in mind that you're going to buy non-performing notes and you never want to own the property. You're going to do workouts on every one of those non-performing notes. And here you buy it and you go to contact the borrower. They've already skipped out. They've moved on. You're sitting there with an empty house. And that's the last thing you want, because the house is in California and you're in New York and you're going, oh my gosh, how am I going to deal with this? And so it's not only that, but things can come up. You can have assessments come up. There can be delinquent taxes. There's the cost of foreclosing. I mean, hopefully you can negotiate and get a deed in lieu, but sometimes that's not possible. And sometimes I know with the non-performings I worked, we had a hard time finding the borrower. Many times we had to do skip tracing and locate the borrower. And so overall, what I have found is for a beginner in notes, it's much smarter to start with the performing notes. Learn the lingo, learn how a discount works, learn the nuances of notes in general. Practice on the seller carrybacks because they're so much easier. I mean, I have systematized the seller carrybacks to where you can just follow my checklist, go right down it, and there are very few variations off of my checklist. And the really cool thing is when you're flipping a seller carryback, there's no risk because you're not going to buy the note unless you've already got it sold. So you have no money at risk. At best, you might have $350 in an appraisal. That's it. And so to me, if you're starting out and you don't know real estate, especially if you don't know the real property, because when you're buying a non-performing note, there's a very good chance you might wind up with the real property. If you have never been a landlord, you've never had to rehab a property, you've never done any of that, that might be a little bit more than you want to bite off at this point. Get some deals under your belt and get some experience before you go to the non-performing notes. Also, it really bothers me when I hear people suggest that someone totally new to real estate notes should start out with non-performing notes. It amazes me because, well, I don't understand how somebody could jump in and do non-performing notes when many of them don't even know what a note is, or they don't know the difference between a mortgage and a deed of trust. And they don't know how to run the numbers on it. They don't know how to use the calculator. And it's like, it would make so much more sense to learn discounted notes by doing the performing notes first, where it's risk-free. And then after you learn that, then move in to the non-performing notes, because you can make great money with non-performing notes. And it's almost like, I think that there's different strategies for different people. Now, I loved doing the non-performing notes when I had a full staff. And I mean, we were buying all over the country and we were rocking and rolling in that. Now, since then, I have downsized. I now work from home. Matthew, who you just heard from before, he's the only one that I have him. He's not an employee, but contract services. And so for me, and I have 6 grandchildren and a new puppy now. And so the last thing I want to do is be bogged down with a pool of notes. So there was a time and place in my life when I loved it, but not at this time. And so what I do now is I will buy one-offs. So if somebody has a pool and they've got something in my area where I want to buy, I mean, I've acquired some of my rental properties by buying the defaulted note and then getting a deed in lieu. And now, we've fixed it up with my son's help. He's done that. And now we're holding those as rentals. But do you see what I'm saying? How depending on your particular situation and how much experience you have, how much cash you have available, and what your goals are, you may decide to jump right into the non-performing notes, or you might find you're better off to do what I did and start with the performing ones and then move into the non-performing. So if you are waiting for the avalanche of non-performing notes, I would recommend you start with seller carrybacks right now. And so that's what I would like to focus on. How are we doing on questions, Matthew? Do we have any questions coming up?
Yeah, we've got some questions. I think there are things you'll get to, though.
You think what?
I believe that you will get to answer some of these in the presentation.
Okay, you're a little low. I don't know if you can turn up your volume, but I can barely hear you. Okay? All right, so let's go on. And I do encourage you to put your questions in the chat. And when we get finished, I will also have a Q&A afterwards. But as Matthew said, I'm going to go through 2 examples. And I have a feeling I may answer your question right off the bat, okay, or as we move through these examples. So before I start, I do want to make sure we're on the same page with the terminology. So a note is a promise to pay a debt. Your note has your terms in it. I owe you $100,000. I'll pay you $800 a month for so many months. I'll pay you 6% interest. Whatever the terms of the loan are, those are included in the note. Now, if you are in a mortgage state, you would have a mortgage, and that's what provides security or collateral for the lender. Now, you could be in a deed of trust state, which accomplishes the same thing. A mortgage or a deed of trust is what provides security for the note. So if you don't pay, or if the borrower does not pay, then it is the mortgage or the deed of trust that allows the lender to take the property. Okay. And they may do that by negotiating with the borrower and saying, hey, look, you're behind. Instead of me foreclosing and messing up your credit, why don't you just give me the deed? And so that's what I prefer to do. It's always the best way. Well, not always, but typically it's the best way. If there's other judgments and liens on the property, then you may want to foreclose so that you can wipe those out. Okay. But assuming that there are no other judgment liens on there, then a great alternative is just to negotiate a deed in lieu. Okay. So either way, you've got the property that serves as collateral. So if they don't pay you on the note, you can get the property, you could keep it, you can move into it, you could use it as a rental, or you can sell it and recoup your money. Okay? Okay, so what I'd like to do is I want to share with you my basic Sam and Bill example, which is a great example of how seller carrybacks work. And the goal of this is that I want to show you how you can make quick cash without any of your own money invested. Like I said, except maybe $350 for an appraisal. Okay, but without your own money invested, you don't need your own cash or credit, and you can typically do this in 30 to 60 days. Okay, so I want to share with you that, share that with you, and then I'm also going to go through one of my favorite deals and show you how you can make those phenomenal rates of return, the 90 and 100% rates of return. So let me go first through the Sam and Bill example. So let's say that you have Sam seller, and he owns his own house free and clear. He goes to sell it, and every time, and he's got it up for sale by owner, and every time he gets it under contract, it seems like somebody is their bank approval falls through and they can't get a bank loan. Okay, and so this buddy of his says, "Look, Sam, why don't you offer seller financing? You know, you could put an ad on Craigslist. Just change your ad, the house for sale, and say seller will carry or seller financing available." And he said, "After all, what are you going to do with the money?" Now, Sam owns his house, and let's say it's worth $600,000. So he puts an ad on Craigslist, and he does exactly what his friend says, and it says, "Bank's not needed. I'll carry the loan. Seller financing available." And so sure enough, Bill Bauer calls him up, and he goes and he looks at the house, and he is all excited. And he says, "This is perfect for my family." And he says, "Look, I've got $150,000 that I can give you as a cash down payment. I've just sold our family home." And he says, "I'll pay you 10% interest. I'll give you $4,000 a month. And at the end of 10 years, I will refinance and pay you off whatever I owe you." Well, do you think that's a good deal for Sam? 10% interest? I would say so. An immediate sale. And he's going to start collecting payments, and he knows the property. So needless to say, they strike a deal. And so Sam sells the house to Bill. Sorry, I jumped ahead of myself there. Sam sells the house to Bill, and Bill, in exchange, gives Sam the $150,000 as a cash down payment. And then he gives Sam a mortgage for $450,000. Okay. And like I said, if that would have been a deed of trust state, it would have just been a $450,000 deed of trust. So they strike a deal. Do you think that was a good deal for Sam? Well, take a look and see what Sam actually got. First of all, he got a really fast sale of his house, didn't he? And then he's getting a 10% rate of return, so an above market rate of return, and he's got some tax benefits from an installment sale, and overall, he's got a nice, safe investment. So needless to say, Sam is very happy. So let's say that now Sam starts collecting payments. 2 years go by. This $450,000 note is paid down to $443,000 and just over $443,000. And then COVID-19 happens. And everything changes. All of a sudden, Bill needs money. His tourist-based business is shut down. He's trying to figure out how he's going to get money for his family. How is he going to take care of his employees? How can he keep everything hanging on until we get through this? And so Sam figures he needs $375,000. And he recalls that he had received a letter from Donna Dealer here saying, "Hey, I pay cash for mortgages." And he had actually called me up, and I gave him a quote, but he turned it down. And he thought, "Gosh, I wonder if she's still interested in buying my note." he calls me up and I said, sure, it sounds like a great deal to me. So we strike a deal and Sam sells the remaining 443 payments that are owed on that mortgage. He sells the payments to me. And in exchange, I give him the $375,000 in cash that he's looking for. So now he's off and running. He never looks back at this note and mortgage again. He has his money. He can now take care of his business, his family, his employees, and he can do whatever he needs to do. So does everybody see that I didn't buy the property? I bought the right to collect the $443,000 of payments that Bill owes. So what happens there? Does Bill's position change at all? No, his position doesn't change. The only thing that's going to change for Bill is that he's going to make payments to me. Everything else stays exactly the same. So let's take a look at this. Do you think that that was a good deal for Sam to sell it? If you look at it from a monetary standpoint, he wound up with $621,000, and he was only selling the house for $600,000. So needless to say, Sam was thrilled. But the truth of the matter is that a lot of times it's not the money that drives these deals. It's the timing. The timing was that the COVID-19 hit and he needs money now. He's trying to figure out how he's going to take care of his employees. He needs money for his own family and he needs money now. Okay? And if it wasn't COVID-19, it'd be something else. Life happens. People need cash. They get married, they get divorced, they want to start a business, go to school, they have health problems, they want to travel. And when things like that happen, that's when they want to sell their notes. And that's what gives you an awesome opportunity. So let's look at this deal though, and let's see, was this a good deal for me? Well, I just bought a $443,000 asset for only $375,000. Is that a good deal? I just built in $68,000 of profit. I love that. You know, when you buy a property, you don't know how much money you're going to make. It's like, I hope I can put another layer of shingles on that roof. And I hope I don't have to tear out all of the electric. Hope that carpet will clean up. I hope I can resell it for this much. Until all is said and done, when you're dealing with real estate, you don't really know what you're going to make. Well, it's completely different when you're dealing with notes and mortgages. Because when you buy a note, you build your profit in up front. So I have $68,000 worth of profit. If the day I buy this, if Bill comes in and says, hey, I just sold the house, I need to pay you off. Or if he says, hey, I refinanced, I'm ready to pay you off. I don't just get the $375,000 back. I get the entire $443,000. Okay? So I'm going to make $68,000 that very same day. And that's one of the beauties of doing discounted notes. And that's why I get so excited about it, because there's a lot that you can do with that $68,000. Okay? That's what gives you the tremendous flexibility. That's what allows you to earn these outrageous rates of return. So it works out on this particular transaction that if I had my own money to buy this note, I would be making 13.25% on this note. If I invested my own $375,000 in this note, I'd be making 13.25%. But hold on a second. Didn't I just say that Bill's position doesn't change? And remember I said that he's only paying 10%. Well, how can I be making 13.25% if he's only paying 10%? The deal is that there are two profit centers when you buy a discounted note. There is the 10% interest that you're going to collect on the unpaid balance. The 10%, the bill is going to keep paying you. But there is also the $68,000 discount that you negotiated. And when you combine the 10% from bill and the $68,000 extra profit that you negotiated, that's how you get a higher rate of return. And that's how I'm making 13.25% on my money. Matthew, are there any questions on this so far?
Not on this.
Okay, we'll keep moving through. And I do promise that I will answer all of your questions, okay? Nick said that I can stay on as long as necessary. So I will make sure to take all your questions when I get finished, okay? Okay, so what's important to understand on this is the less that you pay for a discounted mortgage, the higher your rate of return. So when instead of the $443,000, I bought it for only $375,000. That's what gave me the 13.25. Okay. So I said that if you had your own money, you could make 13.25. But what are you going to do if you don't have your own cash? Well, it's real simple, because you're going to make a lot of money on the deal, even if you don't have any money. Okay. If you don't have your own money to buy the note, you just flip it. Have any of you ever flipped a property? Well, just like you flip a property, you wholesale a property, you can flip a note. And you can do this, the way I teach it, you can do it without your own money. You use, whoever you're flipping it to, you use their money to buy it, okay? But the key is that you're going to flip the note. And what's really cool is you can do this with either non-performing notes or seller carrybacks. So this is an important thing here. Let's say that you've got a handle. Let's say you know the vice president of a bank, and you've got an in where you can get non-performing notes from this vice president, but you've never worked a non-performing note before. Well, an easy way for you to make money on that, mark it up 10 grand and sell it to somebody else who does know what they're doing. I mean, it's a great way to make quick cash, okay? And you can do that on either the non-performing or the performing notes, okay? So let's continue on with our...
Donna, we did have a question come in on the example.
Okay.
Jason he said, so then the $68,000 is realized upon selling or refinancing of the property.
That is exactly right. That is so cool that you recognize that, because that is how you get the really high rates of return. And Jason, I'm actually going to show you an example of that when we finish Sam and Bill. And you will see it's amazing what happens, because when you buy this, that's $68,000. I was expecting to get over the remaining 8 years that was owed on that note. But if they refinance, or if they sell the house and I get paid off, and let's say I get it in 3 months, shoot, what if I foreclose and I get paid off in 3 to 6 months? Do you see? I collect the $68,000 in a matter of a few months instead of 8 years. And that's what makes your rate of return really, really skyrocket. I love, in fact, I'll tell you, my strategy is that whenever I see a note that I think is going to pay off early, and you can identify them really easy. Like if the borrower has a 750 credit score, I'll tell you one time, I've done this a number of times, but one time I was buying this note and it was a second. It was a performing second. And I had somebody say, why would you want to buy that? The fact was that the second had, I'm making up numbers now because I can't remember it, but like it had 5 years left. But the first only had 3 years left. I mean, isn't it pretty obvious when they refinance the first that they're also going to pay off the second? And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So my rate of return went through the roof. So it's easy to identify the notes that you think will pay off early, those are the notes that I hold for myself. So when I'm out there marketing for the discounted notes, I've got a whole marketing program on where to find them. A lot of my students like to buy a list of people who are receiving payments, and I've got several different list providers that I prefer to use. And you buy the list and you can either send out postcards or letters. And I've got the letters all written up for you. You can use exactly the same ones. I've got a really cool, it's a little bit different strategy where you just pique the note seller's interest. They don't know you're selling a note or that you want to buy a note. And that gets them to call. But that's what we did in the spring that generated a flood of business. That's what people are doing right now that's bringing in a lot of deals. Now, besides that, you can also, like I mentioned, you can do networking, like at events just like this. Get on the chat, say, I'm looking for notes. Anybody have notes in such and such a state, whatever it is you want. The RIA groups, investment groups, meetup groups, those are all good places to network. And I've got like a list of 20 different places of people who can refer deals to you, like mortgage brokers, realtors, attorneys. I love probate attorneys because when somebody passes and they've been receiving payments on a note, their heirs want to sell that note. They just want the money. And so probate attorneys, divorce attorneys, real estate attorneys, financial planners, CPAs, the list goes on and on. And so when you connect with one of those people, what happens is they are a constant source of repeat business. So it's not just like you find one note seller, but I'll tell you, also, I did a deal, it was last September. I bought a note from a fellow. I just, before I got on here, got an email from him. He's got another note he wants to sell. So you get somebody who is actively creating notes, and that can be also a good source of repeat business. So I have a whole marketing plan laid out, and I'm actually going to share that with you at the very end, how you can get that. It's a very detailed 8-hour training that I did, and I'm going to make that available to you. Just as because of Nick, and I wanted to do something special for his expo. So I'll tell you about that at the end. But let's go back.
Donna, I want to say that you just answered several questions that came up earlier.
Okay. Okay.
Ari did have a question on your example that you just gave. Don't you have to first take ownership before you can get that 68,000?
Yes, and that's what I'm going to show you now. You're absolutely right.
Great. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. So if you don't have money to buy the note yourself, you are going to flip it to somebody else. So, well, I need to back up. I see where his question, I think it was a he, was coming from. If you want to make the 68,000, the easy way to do it is you have your own cash. Now, I have some advanced strategies. I came up with this really cool thing that I have put so much money in my IRA just this summer. And it's an advanced strategy where you can sell the note to an investor, but you keep an interest in that 68,000. It is the most awesome technique. It's too detailed and advanced for me to share in these few minutes that I have here, but it works. And so that is a way you can do it. But the easy answer is that if you want the 68,000, then that's for when you have the cash to invest. But that brings up an important point. If you don't have any money, you're starting out with nothing, or if you have your money already invested and you just don't have cash available, start by flipping the seller carrybacks. Make 35,000 here, 50,000 there, 10,000 there. Like my student, 400,000 over here. And it's not long before you have enough cash where you can be the investor. And that's when you use your own cash, you buy the note, and then you would collect that 68,000 when it pays off early. I hope I'm not confusing you. There are so many different, really cool things that you can do with notes. But my intent today was just to show you two strategies, how to flip the note and then what happens on an early payoff. But I've mentioned some kind of sophisticated things, but I hope that you at least see the possibilities. And so start out by flipping notes, because flipping a note is the fastest, the easiest, the safest way to make money in real estate. And the main reason is because you never own the property. You own the financing. So you never have to worry about the property. No tenants, no trash, no toilets, no termites, no rehabs. Do you see why I love notes? So I never have to deal with any of that. And that's why they are so risk-free. And again, like I mentioned earlier, what you do is you never buy a note unless you've already got it sold. And then that's what really makes it risk-free. It's not like you're going to buy it and hope you can sell it to somebody else. No, you're going to get it under contract to buy and then get it under contract to sell, which is exactly what I'm going to show you right now. So if you want to know the secret to how you can make money flipping notes, it is right here. The secret is that you find an investor who wants a lower rate of return than what you're buying it for. Okay, so we just said that if I had my own cash, I would be making 13.25%. So I have this note under contract with Sam Seller that he's going to sell it to me for $375,000, which is we call it a buy rate, the 13.25%. That if I had my own cash, that's how much I would be. That's my yield on that note. If you want to make money on this deal without your own cash or credit, all you need to do is find an investor who would be happy making less than 13.25. So let's say you're in the chat right now and you're talking to somebody and you find out that they're saying, man, I'm so tired of dealing with real estate. I would love to do notes. If I could make 11 to 12%, I would buy notes instead. Well, if they want to make, let's call her Irene Investor, and if she wants an 11.5% yield on this note, that means she would pay $410,000 for the note that you have under contract to buy for $375,000. Should we sell it to her? I sure would, because you're going to put $35,000 profit in your bank account. That's how easy it is. People think that discounted notes are some really sophisticated, difficult thing. People tell me all the time, Donna, one of these days, I'm going to be a note investor. I'm learning real estate first. I'm thinking, man, you got that backwards. It's a lot easier to do the notes. And then if you want the real estate, then you buy a non-performing note and use it as a back door to getting the property. If you want to build a real estate portfolio, there's no better way than to buy non-performing notes and negotiate to get the deed or foreclose. You wind up with the property. Okay? But if you want a risk-free strategy, something fast, easy, and safe, this transaction right here is as good as it gets. I mean, this is how I've made the majority of my money for the last 30 years. I love flipping seller carryback notes. Okay.
So Donna, Sarah had a question. So basically she asked this, does this work by assignment like wholesaling a property does?
Yes, absolutely. There's two different ways that you can actually do this transaction. And because of time, I didn't include the slides, but assigning the note is a very easy way to do it. And you just, excuse me, I said assigning the note, I meant assigning the contract. So you could simply assign your contract that you have with Sam. You could assign that to Irene. She writes you out a check for $35,000. And now she steps into your position and she buys it directly from Sam. You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly right. And thank you for mentioning that. Now, the only problem with that is that now Irene Investor knows how much cash you've made on that deal. And, I get thank you notes from my investors, but inevitably, what happens is if they find out how much profit I made, then they think they left money on the table. So another way to do it, which would keep your profit private, is to do a simultaneous close. Now, you might be familiar with those, and some people might be going, wait, Donna, don't you know that you can't do simultaneous closes? Well, you can't if you're flipping a property. But if you're flipping the financing, that's a whole different ballgame. I used to own a title company, and all three of my underwriters, the insurance companies the title insurance companies that insured the deals, they all gave their blessing to doing a simultaneous close as long as it was a note and not a property. And so that way, if you have two closings, the first closing is Sam sells the note to you, and then you sell the note to Irene Investor. Unless people can see both settlement statements at the same time, they have no idea what you made. So either one of those. Now, I have been doing a lot more of the assignment of contracts recently because it saves money. You don't have a second set of closing costs. Okay, so that's why I do that. So do you see here how easy this really is? All you're going to do is buy low, sell high, and whatever the difference is, that's your profit. Look, this would be a good time for questions. Matthew, anything else on this particular transaction?
Well, Sarah did have a follow-up to the question you just answered. So she said, when you put a property under contract to wholesale, the contract has an inspection period, which gives you time to find a buyer. Is there an equivalent period of time in a note deal?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What I do is, the way I word it is, we typically close within 30 days, but I ask you to allow 45 in case of any unforeseen glitches with title, or nowadays I'm writing in case of delays in services because of COVID. It can take longer to get the appraisal. The title companies are really busy right now because rates are so low. But yes, you definitely have to have a time period because there's due diligence you have to do. And that's where my checklist comes in. You are going to get credit on the payor. And what I do is I get them to get their own credit. I explain that all in what I'm going to share with you in just a few minutes at the training. But you're going to get a credit on the payor. You're going to get an appraisal on the property. You are going to check the title. If they already have a lender's title policy, that's going to flow through to you when you buy the note. But if they don't have one, you'll want to get a new one. And I always get an update either way. You're going to make sure that your investor, or you, if you're buying it for yourself, that you're added on to the hazard insurance. So if there's a hurricane or if the property burns down, you're covered. So you're going to do all of that. And then you need time to line up your investor. So all of that happens in that 30 to 45 days. And if something happens, if you don't like their credit, or you find out something bad about the note, I have a clause in my agreement, and it is an exclusive right to walk away from the deal. So you don't have to worry about, well, what happens if I can't perform? You walk away. No harm, no foul. So that's why it is so safe. You're only going to follow through with the purchase if you have an investor lined up to buy it.
So Ari asked if you have exit clauses. Do you want to tell them about your weasel clause?
Sure. My weasel clause, which I have been using for over 30 years, I use it in everything. No one has ever called me out on it. You say, subject to the review of my financial partner, or subject to an inspection. Don't you get those crossed out? They don't want to wait for that. So use this. This is subject to my exclusive, that's important, exclusive review and approval of all relevant documentation, including but not limited to an appraisal, title, credit report on the payor, and proven pay history. What that means is if for any reason at all I have any problem with any document relating to this deal, I can walk away. And it doesn't matter whether you think I should walk away. That exclusive approval means if I think it's bad, I don't have to do it. That's my weasel clause. I hope you wrote that down. I'll repeat it one more time. Subject to my exclusive review and approval of all relevant documentation, including but not limited to an appraisal, title, credit report on the payor, and proven pay history. Any others on this? Any other questions?
A good question was what are your closing costs typically, and how does this compare to closing costs on properties?
Well, typically I allow $1,200. If it's a smaller mortgage, it can be less than that. Or if there's already an existing lender's title policy, or if it's a larger mortgage, if we're talking a $200,000 or $300,000 mortgage and we have to get a brand new policy, then I'd allow maybe $2,000 in closing costs. And I always build those into my profit. So on this $35,000, I would take out that would be gross profit. So that would be less probably $2,000 in expenses. So you'd probably net $33,000. Okay.
All right, good to go.
I notice here that we have kind of gone over. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip my next two slides. I will come back to them real quick if you'd like to stay on them. But I want to tell you about something. And I asked Matthew to make this available this weekend. This is something that I offered to my regular students who have been with me for years. As I mentioned, if you were on at the very beginning, I was real concerned what would happen when the quarantine hit. And I realized that, and I call it my stimulus plan, the original note buyer stimulus plan, make money from home doing notes. I realized that I had the perfect scenario where note sellers need to sell now. Note sellers that wouldn't accept our offer before, now they are anxious to sell. And so I realized I had something that would help the note sellers get money, as well as help the students, many of them who were quarantined or they weren't essential workers, or, they were laid off or whatever. This was perfect where they could make money from home doing notes. And at the same time, they could solve the note seller's solution, the note sellers who needed cash. And so I did this 8-hour training. Okay. This is not a preview of something else. It's not I hate when they give you like the carrot out there. You want to do this, you want to do that, buy this. No, this was an 8-hour training that I did specifically to help my students learn how to market for seller carryback notes, learn how to negotiate with the note sellers. We did role plays, presenting your quote to them, negotiating the offer with them, all of that. It was very detailed. It was just one of the best trainings that I've ever done. And I made that available to them for only $97. And I told Matthew that just for this weekend, as long as you get it today or tomorrow, I'll make it available to you too. I mean, I'm serious, 8 hours of real training. You're not going to find this anywhere for this price. I did it because I knew that many of my students were hurting and they needed money right now. And I saw this onslaught of all these deals coming in. And so I put this out there so they would learn, this is the best way to market right now. I even introduced a new postcard strategy just for last spring. So all of that is on the 8 hours. If you go to the notebuyer.com/stimulus, just go there And you can pick that up, and it gives all the details of what all's included. You can download the manual. It's all the PowerPoints. It's got the recordings, everything for you. It will be like you were live, and it will help you to really get the best possible start in Notebind, because it's so thorough, so detail oriented, and it's more of a training where I'm actually showing you what you need to do instead of just talking about it. And I go through not only the marketing, but how to evaluate the note and determine if it's good or not, how to formulate your offer, how to present it to the homeowner, all of that. Also,
Donna, I just want to say that you kind of glossed over that all of that you put in the context of how the economy is now and things.
Exactly. This was designed specifically when the quarantine hit, and I was so worried about my students, about myself, about notes. It's like, what do we do now? Because everything has changed. And I realized that we had the perfect solution to people who need cash, my students needing cash and not being able to leave home, as well as all of these note sellers who are now contacting me and saying, hey, is that offer still good? And hey, I need cash. How quickly can you get me cash? And I thought, man, everybody needs to jump on this. And as I mentioned, we had a slowdown in July and August because everybody went on vacation. But man, as soon as September hit, it started back up. I mean, this week has been one of my busiest weeks in getting out quotes. Everybody is wanting to sell their notes simply because they need cash. And so the timing could not be better. And that is why I put this specific training together. And I didn't intend to even sell it, but I got to thinking about, I was thinking of giving you a free report or something. And I thought, you know what? This is such a great training. And it's only $97. You're never going to find that kind and the substance and the quantity of training for $97. I just thought it'd be an awesome deal for you and something that I could really do to help you out. So
Donna, there's a couple of folks on here that already have your master guide system. How would they benefit from the stimulus plan if they already have the master guide?
Well, all the better, because this was really written or given for my existing students. They should just go to the website, thenotebuyer.com/stimulus, and pick it up for $97.
Yeah, what the stimulus plan will do will give you Donna's advice on how to think about the notes that you're looking at in response to how the market is going right now. So a lot of questions came up during that training of, well, how do we, determine the property values and things like this. So
it is specific. Thank you, Matthew. It is specific for this market because I had to change the way I was quoting. I had to change the way I dealt with investors to make sure they were safe. As I mentioned earlier, I was checking rates of return. What if we need to not collect payments, give them a moratorium of 6 months? How's that going to affect the yield? What do we need to change as far as evaluating? Simple thing is just to use a lower investment to value. But in this training, I'm really can't be more specific. It was designed specifically for this market. What's going on in this market? And so it shows you how to evaluate, how to find the deals. I did a special postcard that I've never done before on how to get people to respond with their notes. And I've got my letter that I have fine-tuned over 30 years, and it gets the best results of all if you want to do direct mail. It tells you how you can network with people. We have role playing on it, so you know how to negotiate, how to present your offer to the note seller, as well as how to negotiate to get it closed. So this is, I don't know how else to describe it. It's something very special that I put together just because I wanted to help my students. And so if you are interested in getting into notes, this is the most detailed entry into the note world that I've ever done. I mean, I would mention that you're probably going to want to get the Note Buyer's Master Guide system, because once you see what can happen with it, you're probably going to want more. But This gives you enough to get started right now where you can buy a list, you have all the marketing laid out, you can start your marketing, you'll know how to deal with the note sellers, get the notes under contract. It is very thorough in that regard. So it will be up through Sunday night at thenotebuyer.com/stimulus. If you have any questions, whether it's on this program or anything I've said or anything having to do with notes, feel free to email me at info@thenotebuyer.com. That's info@thenotebuyer.com. I do have one other example that I did mention would you guys like to see how it works out where you get a 95% return on your money? Or I can also just take questions. Let me know in the chat what you would like to do. Matthew, can you let me know what people are interested in? I want to make sure all questions are answered, Matthew.
Yeah, I'm holding on to some questions that we haven't gotten to yet. There's about 6 of them. But
let's go on those first.
Yeah, do it. Yep. Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead. We'll get to them.
Are you going to give them to me? Because I haven't been watching the chat.
Yeah, why don't you hit the example up and then we'll close with questions.
Okay, I was going to go the other way. No worries. Okay, so let's back up here a bit. So I am going to go through this quickly because I am way over time. But this is one of my favorite all-time deals. And I have a coaching program that I offer my students. It's called My Easy as 1, 2, 3 Coaching. And Rick was part of that coaching program. And what it is you do the marketing and you find the deal, and then you send me the submission form. And I walk you through the entire transaction. And then we use my investors, so you don't even have to worry about finding an investor. And then when we close, we split the profit 50-50. And this was one of those easy as 1, 2, 3 closing deals. And what's cool is Rick lives in Detroit, I live in Cincinnati, and Miss Annie lived in Dallas. And so she had responded to one of his letters. She'd been in real estate all her life. She was in it before women were in it at all. And she was a landlord, then she sold and carried back a note, and she was wanting to sell. She was very ill, and she was trying to get her affairs in order before she passed. And in fact, it was a good thing that we were able to move quickly because she passed just a couple of weeks after we bought the note. And I have to tell you that happens a lot. A lot of my clients are elderly, and they're selling the note because they want to get their affairs in order so that their kids don't have to deal with it. But Miss Annie called up Rick and said, look, if I can get $80,000 for this note, I want to sell it. And so we offered her $80,475, which was a 25% return. So I sent the information to one of my students who lived in Texas. I didn't know he lived a half hour from the property. I'm not kidding. He drove over and looked at the property. And so he bought this for $95,000, which gave him a 17% return. We just flipped it very quickly. Truthfully, we could have got 100 for it, but he was willing to go 95. And Rick and I both agreed that we would be happy to split $14,525, less our closing costs. Okay. And we just wanted to get it closed quickly for Miss Annie. So that was a great deal right there. That was a win-win. Miss Annie was very happy. Rick and I were very happy for maybe 25 hours of work to split. You know, we just made almost $7,000 each for about 25 hours of work. Mostly on my part, I might add. And needless to say, Ivan was thrilled because he got this great investment. This was secured by a $150,000 property. He's got $95,000 invested in it, which would be a super safe deal even in today's marketplace. And he's making 17% on his money. But what I really wanted to show you was, I can't remember, I think it was Stephen, but I'm not sure if that was his name. He asked about, don't you need to own the note in order to get the benefit of receiving that discount that you negotiated? And this is a perfect example of that. So Ivan investor buys the note. And actually, the night before we closed, we got on a call with the borrower. I always like to introduce them before we close. And so he says to the borrower, he says, how's your credit? And if you thought of refinancing, interest rates are real low right now. I could help you. And she says, well, her husband had a heart attack and she had a few issues with her credit report. He said, look, I specialize in helping people with that. If I can get your credit score up, would you be interested in refinancing? So 3 months later, I get an email from Ivan, and he wants to know if I have any more notes because this note paid off. That's what always happens, by the way. So he worked with her, got her credit score taken care of. He got a payoff on a $95,000 investment. He got a payoff of $117,000, plus he got the monthly payments for 3 months. He wound up with a 96% return. And like I said at the very beginning, that was because he got the discount. That was like, it was over 117. I want to say it was probably about $120,000 note, the unpaid balance on it, that we bought from Miss Annie for just over $80,000. And we sold it to him for $95,000. So he had about a $25,000 discount in what he when he bought it. So instead of waiting for, I don't even remember how many payments were left on it, by helping her to refinance, he realizes that $25,000 discount that I negotiated for him. So that is how you get these phenomenal rates of return. People think that you have to do all this calculating and all this finagling and this sophisticated structure. No, it's just math. If you buy a discounted note and if it pays off early, your rate of return goes through the roof. It's a fact. You can't change it. And the more of a discount that you buy that note at, the greater your rate of return. And the quicker you get it done, the greater your rate of return. So that's why, as I said earlier, when I'm looking at notes, the notes that I flip to someone else are the notes that I mean, they're good notes, but let me put it this way. If I think that the note's going to pay off, those are the notes that I keep for myself. And sometimes if I don't have cash available, I will even borrow money from an investor and promise him maybe an 8%, 7 or 8% rate of return. So, and I secure that loan with the note that I'm buying. And so in that way, I pay my investor a simple, it's compounded, but it is a 7 to 8% interest on his money. And that's how I can get the benefit of earning that discount, the $68,000, like I showed you on the Sam and Bill deal. Okay, questions?
So Sheila asked, who's paying the returns in this example? If it's Miss Annie, then she's still paying after receiving $80K cash, no?
Sheila, I'm glad you answered that. Okay, Miss Annie is out of the picture. She sold this at a discount. You know what? Effectively, you could say she's paying it because she had, let's call it a $120,000 note. I just don't remember the exact amount. It was close to that. She sold a $120,000 note for $80,475. So effectively, it was that discount that allowed Ivan to make 96% on his money. Do you remember, and maybe you weren't on in the very beginning, when I did the Sam and Bill example, and I showed that I had $68,000 worth of profit negotiated in that deal, and that I was getting 13.25%, but Bill was only paying 10. The reason is when you buy a discounted note, there are two profit centers. One is whatever interest rate the borrower is paying. In Sam and Bill, it was 10%. In this one, I don't even remember that. I don't even remember what it was. But you're going to get the interest that the borrower is going to pay each month that he has not paid off. He pays interest on the unpaid balance. But more importantly, whatever discount you negotiated, when that pays off, that's all extra profit for you. And it's that discount that you negotiated up front that ultimately came out of Miss Annie's pocket. It's that discount that makes your rate of return go through the roof. And a lot of people don't understand that there are two profit centers when you buy a discounted note. Did that help, Sheila?
All right, so Gigi had a question. Is there any due diligence responsibility around a private note, like a bank note?
I'm not sure that I understand the question, but there is definitely due diligence. I mentioned this before. I have a checklist, which makes it very easy. Before, what you're going to do is you're going to get this under contract, and I usually give 30 to 45 days to close. In that period of time, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get an appraisal and confirm the value of the property. I will run title, make sure that the title is good. If there's an existing lender's policy, when the note is assigned to me or my investor, that insurance is going to be assigned as well. If there is not an existing title policy, I will get a new title policy. I will get a credit report on the payor. If you are not set up, and I am not set up to run credit. I used to be when I had an office, but they don't like it so much when you're working out of your home, the credit bureaus. So what I do is I have a way of, I talk to the notes or the payor. I just explain, hey, if I pull your credit, then it's going to ding your credit score by 4 points. If you don't mind just going on creditkarma.com or one of those free credit report websites, pull your own credit, make sure it's got credit scores, email it over to me, and that way it doesn't hurt your credit. I have never had anybody refuse to do that. So that's how I pull the credit. So that's all the due diligence that I'm going to do. Well, it's not all. I also do a borrower's interview, and I used to do that at the end of the due diligence right before I'm ready to close. But now I've moved that up because I want to know, are they working? How has this quarantine affected them? And, do they have regular income? Are they an essential worker? I need to know that going in because I don't want to invest a whole lot of time. And I need to know how to structure the deal, because even if they're having problems, I can structure the deal. I might pay less money for it. I might take a larger discount. I might structure my offer so, like, let's say I'm buying the note for $50,000. I might have to go back to the note seller and say, look, she hasn't been working for the last 5 months. So what I'll do is I will give you $40,000 now, and provided that she pays on time, in 6 months or in a year or whatever, I will pay you the other $10,000. So those are the kind of things that I do to make this all work in this market. Usually you don't have to do anything. But I'm saying if there is a problem, I teach you ways that you can still make sure that it's a safe deal for everybody involved.
So Sarah and Sheila had a follow-up question on the example. Miss Annie's paying monthly, and who's paying the interest on the unpaid balance?
The borrower is paying the interest on the unpaid balance. We're buying the note. Let's just go back up here real quick.
I have to reshare your screen, Donna. Sorry, I took it off. I thought we were up.
Okay.
Let me take control for a sec. Thanks.
Sure. And you want to, all right, I can probably get us back there real easy.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to go back a little bit right here. So
I don't think it's shared. One sec. Showing is shared on my end.
It's showing shared on mine.
I don't see it though.
I see it on my upper screen.
Yeah, I don't see it on the stream though.
So what it is, we have Sam who sold the house to Bill. Bill's making payments to Sam. When I buy the note from Sam, Sam is out of the picture now. He goes and spends the money, does whatever he wants. I did not buy the house. I bought the right. I stepped into Sam's shoes. An easy way to look at it is Sam is the bank. Okay? Think about on your own mortgage. You know how the banks sell to another bank? That's what happened here. Sam Seller, the investor, the original owner of the house and the investor in this deal, he sells the note to me. So now I'm the bank. So now Bill Bauer, who's been in the deal all along, Bill is going to make payments to me. So Bill's position does not change. That note and that mortgage are in place. And unless you agree in writing to modify it, you live by those terms. So the only thing that changes is Bill's going to pay me instead of Sam Seller. So he's making payments to me, and he is paying the 10% interest on the unpaid balance. But he owes me $443,000. I only paid $375,000 for that note. So I built in a $68,000 profit, and that's that second profit center that I spoke about. It's real important to understand the two profit centers, the interest that Bill is paying and the discount that you negotiated, which effectively came out of the note seller's pocket. Anything?
So the original note issuer in this example is a bank or mortgage company, but Miss Annie is selling it to you?
No, it's actually a private party. And thank you for asking that question. I know when you're dealing with non-performing notes that those are typically bank notes. But when you get into the seller carryback arena, those are private notes. Typically, it is a mom and pop that lived in the house for 40 years. They sell it instead of cash. They say, look, you can pay me over time. We'll live off of that till we die. And so normally it is a mom and pop, and that would be your preferred person to deal with. But it could also be, it could be a landlord or a rehabber that has rental properties. They decide to sell them and they carry back a note. It could be it could be someone who bought a pool of non-performing notes and who modified them, and now they're reperforming notes. Now, we do handle those a little bit differently. That is the one case when it's likely to be a bank note, if it's a reperforming note. Whereas most of the notes that I'm dealing with are privately held notes. A private individual held them. I would be amiss if I did not mention, yes, we buy notes. If there are a lot of people that sell properties and carry back notes, whether they could be buying REOs or whatever, but they're in the business of selling properties or of constructing properties and then carrying back notes. They have to use a licensed mortgage loan originator. They have to abide by Dodd-Frank. Okay. Now you might think, oh man, now we're not going to be able to do anything. You need to know that represents a very small number of the notes that I buy. 98% of the notes that I buy are bought from a private individual who used to live in the property. And they qualify for the one-time exclusion for Dodd-Frank. So Dodd-Frank doesn't matter. And that is absolutely the heavy majority of the notes that I buy. Okay.
So Donna, you mentioned the easiest 1, 2, 3. I had several questions coming in about how can I become your student? Why don't you give them an overview of what the coaching looks like?
Okay, I actually was not prepared for that, so I don't have any slides ready to show you. I am putting back the stimulus thing to start with.
The screen's not up, just so you know. I don't know why not.
Oh, it's not working. Okay, well, let me explain this first, and then I'll answer your question. So what I offered earlier, and you would want to write this down, thenotebuyer.com/stimulus. Okay, and then info@thenotebuyer.com would be the email. Matthew, maybe you could reach out to Elijah and ask him to share the screen again. That might be what's wrong. Maybe he needs to do that.
Yeah.
But so I have this stimulus plan that I put together specifically for this market, brand new, very thorough. It's 8 hours of training that I designed for my current students, and I did that in April. It's absolutely 100% right on for today's market, specifically for today's market. And I just decided to make that available this weekend to everybody that is on this expo. And you can get that for only $97. It is, if you go to thenotebuyer.com/stimulus, you'll see everything that it includes. It's recording of the 8 hours. You get a copy of the manual. It's downloadable. But it will cover everything on how you can start doing your marketing, how you evaluate notes in this marketplace, negotiating with the note seller, and everything. Okay, and that's all included in this training. If you want to take advantage of the easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching, I would recommend you can go to thenotebuyer.com. Matthew, we don't have a code for them or anything, do we? I'd like to give them something off of the website price. Could you put a code together for them?
Not quickly, but send an email if you're interested and get started with that. I'll give you a good deal.
Okay, if you are interested in becoming a student, I'm going to give them the deal. Write this down, Matthew, and then they can email you at info@thenotebuyer.com, and then you can take care of them. So I have an entire home study course that includes the easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching. The study course, you can find it itemized out at thenotebuyer.com. Just click on products or store, and it will list that. It retails for $2,497. If you email Matthew at info@thenotebuyer.com, I will give that to you for $1,297. And that's actually 4 of my mainstay, my flagship courses. You get my master guide. You get my 2019 Note Buyer Academy media set. You get how to create notes, smart seller financing. You get my calculator course, making dollars and cents with the calculator. You get my complete library of forms, which includes non-performing notes as well as performing notes. If you're interested in non-performing, I do cover that. I have a whole day devoted to non-performing, and that's in my 2019 media set. And for that, that's my 4-day academy, and you'll get the recordings, the audio, and the video in a downloadable manual. And then I will include with that 3 months of the easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching. That is a phenomenal set. It's at a great price. I don't even offer it on the website. If I had known we were going to offer this today, I would have given you a link or something. But if you email Matthew at info@thenotebuyer.com, he will take care of you for $1,297. You'll get the complete home study course, and that includes the stimulus plan. So you don't have to pay the $97 for that. That would include that, and 3 months of the easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching. Matthew, I want to change that. I'm going to give them 6 months of easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching. Will you make a note of that?
Okay, make a note.
I know that's double what I normally do, but I want to give them something special. This is a big event. Nick is always good to me, and I want to be good to his people.
I'm putting a coupon code together right now for you guys. Donna, why don't you answer a question while I'm doing this? So I had a few people asking, how do you find people to buy your notes?
Oh, you know what? Those are so easy to find. Everybody wants to buy the notes. The thing is that when you market for these notes, most people will not take the time to do it. And when you can offer them a high quality note where it's secured by real estate at a low loan to value, all of my notes are less than 80%. A lot of times they're 60, 70% loan to value. So they're super, super safe. And I'm offering them a really nice rate of return. My investors come to me. I don't advertise for them. Like When I first started, I thought that I would need to build a database of investors. I was actually at the Cincinnati RIA group, and I had a couple people who came up to me and said, "Hey, when you buy these notes, what do you do with them? Do you ever sell any?" And so I wound up with 4 or 5 investors from the Cincinnati RIA group without advertising, just people who came up to me. And they were my investors for a number of years, because what happens is I teach them how to get the early payoff. So when they wind up with a $117,000 payoff, just like I've an investor did, they email me again, "Hey, I got 117,000. Do you have another note?" And so I get them through networking at events just like this expo. I promise you, there are people that are right here on this expo that have cash that would love to invest in seller carrybacks. That's how I get them. And certainly, if you are a student of mine, you don't have to worry about it, because I've got investors all over the country. I've been doing this for over 30 years. So we use my investors. So that is not even a concern for you if you are my student. Okay. Matthew, were you able to get the coupon?
Yeah, I'm just about to put a bow tie on that. Would you take one more question? So Steve wanted to know, what type of notes should a newbie start with? Mortgages, contract for deeds, deed of trust?
Okay, a mortgage and a deed of trust effectively are the same thing. The deed of trust, it just allows you to foreclose quicker. Okay, it's legally the way that it's titled. And quite frankly, there are a lot of non-performing note buyers that will only buy deed of trust for that reason. I happen to be in Ohio, which is a mortgage state, and yes, it takes a little bit longer to foreclose, but I would not hesitate to buy non-performing mortgages all day long. So effectively, they're the same thing. So I will buy either mortgages or deeds of trust. We do also buy contract for deeds. That needs to be handled a little bit differently. And so, but I definitely, if you want to market for a contract for deeds or land contracts, fine. We'll just handle a little bit differently when we close. Any other questions?
Yeah, sure. Actually, no, that's it. So I've got this coupon code together. I'm writing out in the chat, but the coupon code.
Are you going to give it to him? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I'm putting it in the chat. I'm writing that out right now, but it's Expo 1200 without quotes, and I'll put the link in there where you can.
Expo 1200.
That's right, because it's $1,200 off the retail price for the $12.97.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's a good way to remember it. So if you're interested in my entire home study course and my Easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching, just go to thenotebuyer.com and go to the store or products, and you'll see it listed there. Be sure to use the coupon code Expo 1200, which will save you $1,200. You can get my entire set for $12.97, including 6 months of coaching. And you will also get the stimulus plan included in that automatically. If you just want to start out and test the waters, I highly recommend the stimulus plan for $97. To sign up for that, just go to thenotebuyer.com/stimulus. It's actually on the storefront as well. I think it's the first product there. But some people might want to just start with that to get their feet wet. I think I saw another question come up.
Jason had asked if non-performing notes can be acquired from banks.
Yes, that is where very seldom, in fact, I don't even remember ever buying a non-performing private note. All of the non-performing notes that I have bought have all been bank notes. So absolutely. And my favorite way is to smile and dial. The best deals that I have come up with have come from me calling the bank. And you can get a list of people who hold mortgages, call them up and say, "Look, I'm marketing for non-performing notes. Do you have any dogs on your books that you want to get rid of?" That is, to me, the best way to do it. Like I said before, I also buy one-offs from, like if somebody sends me a pool of notes, a spreadsheet, I will go through those, and if there's something on there where I'm looking to buy and hold, then I will buy a one-off from there
their tape.
Well, that's all the questions we've got here, Donna. I'm not seeing any follow-ups coming in.
Well, thank you all for being on. I really appreciate the questions. It sounds like that you're very interested. It sounds like you got it. That's the big thing.
Oh, and by the way, Goodwin and Bill are both on.
Goodwin and who else? Bill?
Yeah, Bill Griesmer's here.
They are both note masters, and they're in a mastermind training group that I have. That's if you really want to get into notes. So, hey, Goodwin, and hey, Bill, good to see you on here. So, okay, is that it? I got a little puppy dog, a little 8-week-old standard poodle that I had to get my neighbor to come over and babysit for so that he wouldn't be howling in the background while I was in here. So I'm kind of anxious to get going, if you don't mind. Any other questions? I want to make sure everything's answered, though.
Yeah, that's it. I got
Okay.
a lot of thank yous, and had while you were going, had several comments about appreciating the information and thoroughness and everything else.
Well, great. Well, listen, I would love to work with you. So if you are interested in doing notes, definitely check out thenotebuyer.com. If you have questions, email info@thenotebuyer.com, and Matthew will take good care of you. We'll get you all set up, and we can start doing deals together. I'm telling you that in over 30 years, this is the busiest I have ever been. It is so busy that I'm getting people to help me. That's how busy it is. So you couldn't pick a better time to do seller carrybacks. You can work them from home. You can put 10 grand in your pocket the next 30 to 60 days, and you can help the note sellers that are looking for cash. So it's the perfect strategy for today's market. Okay. So I hope you'll join me. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks a lot. You guys have a good weekend.